Thank you for joining us today. I'm Corbin Delaney. This is Mike Barker.
And I'm glad to be here with Corbin this afternoon.
Absolutely. Well, today we're here to talk about laminitis.
Yep, it is a problem not only here in the U.S., but around the world, that affects many, many horses. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. We're streaming today from both the Life Data Facebook page as well as our YouTube page. So I'm going to be monitoring comments on both sides of things. So feel free to drop any questions you have at any point in time. A lot of those questions are probably going to be answered during today's presentation, but at the very end of the presentation, we'll begin answering any unanswered questions and we'll allow you to drop those in the comments and answer those directly. Sure. But as I said, we're going to be streaming from 2 different platforms today, and I know we had about 400 something people signed on for today. So those comments might get missed depending on how many we have come in. And so if we miss your question, feel free to message us directly here on Facebook. You can also email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com.
And we'll be more than glad to help you.
Absolutely. And as always, as a reminder, don't click on any links that anyone drops in the comments. We do our best to delete those and hide those, but of course, the way social media is nowadays, a lot of those are spam. So if someone sends you a link or asks you to click on something, don't click that unless it's, of course, directly from us. We do have a grand prize giveaway today. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later on into the presentation. It is for the U.S. only. Due to those pesky international giveaway laws, we're not able to offer that to everybody. In the meantime, before we begin, make sure to like the video, comment, and let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to share it, because there's going to be a lot of really useful information, especially for those who are having a laminitic horse and having to deal with it.
Sure. What to do, how to prevent it. Sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I can see we got people from Arizona here in the United States. We've got Norfolk in the UK, Canada. So we've got all around the world today watching.
Very good. Well, we're glad that you're joining us this afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know when we posted this, the big question, I had for everyone was, my horse now has laminitis. What do I do? How do I manage it?
That's a very good question. And a lot of times, Corbin, as far as the management standpoint, it's easier to prevent the problem, number one.
Absolutely.
So, laminitis has been around for a long, long time that has affected our horses. But for some reason, and we'll try to point some of these out, laminitis has become more prevalent.
Absolutely.
Okay? And one of the reasons when we're talking about history and a little bit of background concerning laminitis itself, it wasn't many years ago that as far as the horse population in the U.S., only somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5% were overweight.
Absolutely.
But today we're approaching at least 50% of our population of our horses that are overweight today. So with that being said, we have a bunch of easy keepers out there. We have a lot of different metabolic issues with these horses that are overweight as well. And we end up with laminitis. And I think that's one of the major reasons why we see this drastic increase in the number of cases here in the U.S. and around the world as well. So on average, from some of the numbers that I've looked at here in the U.S., 1 out of every 10 horses is subject to a bout of laminitis. Now, if we were talking about a pony, which I think our last Facebook Live we dealt with feeding the pony, that pony is a very easy keeper, very easy to maintain, and the number of laminitic in ponies is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 out of every 10 ponies. So obesity tends to be a problem and a contributing factor to this particular problem itself. And of course, when we have an easy keeper, that energy or those calories that's being consumed by that horse or by that pony, they end up being stored. number
Absolutely.
one. So what we need to do, we need to be able to flip that. In other words, in place of that energy and calories being stored, it needs to be used up. So that's one of our goals there, okay,
Absolutely.
as far as the metabolism of the horse itself. Also, when we have these extremely obese, overweight horses, that causes the horse to be in a pro-inflammation stage. And what that does, that simply affects just almost every body system within that horse itself. And it becomes a contributing factor as well. So that's just a little background, a little history when we talk about the problem. Now, another thing that we need to point out as well is that what is the difference between laminitis and founder?
Absolutely.
And a lot of times when we're working a trade show, we'll have an individual that will say, well, my horse had laminitis or my horse foundered, okay? I think in simple terms, of course, laminitis is inflammation that's going on within the hoof capsule to begin with. But if we don't jump on the problem and the lamina becomes weakened enough, then the coffin bone within that hoof capsule is going to move or rotate.
Absolutely.
So what I like to suggest is if we have true founder, then we actually have movement or rotation of the coffin bone.
Absolutely.
So we can have a laminitic case without that movement. But when we actually have the movement, then I would like to suggest that that is a true case of founder at that point in time.
And we had a pretty good comment this week where someone mentioned how important x-rays are with the laminitis.
Sure. And that's the only way that we know for sure whether or not we've had that rotation within that hoof capsule itself.
Absolutely.
And of course that requires the services of your vet. And in a lot of cases, you know, it's going to be worth having that foot x-ray to see exactly how much damage has been done there.
Absolutely.
And the degree of rotation that's actually taken place, if that is the case with this laminitic bout then.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think is one of the number one causes of laminitis in these horses today?
Well, a lot of our idle horses today, number one, are what I call pasture ornaments. And in that group of horses there, I would say that mismanagement of feeding those idle horses will contribute to 70 to 80% of those laminitic cases. In other words, a lot of these idle horses are out on green, lush grass 24/7. They're consuming that grass. They're continuing to increase as far as their size and the obesity problem. And of course, what they're consuming is sugar or fructans. And that leads to the obesity problem. It leads to the metabolic issue as well.
Absolutely.
So mismanagement of feeding these idle horses will affect about 70 to 80% from a laminitic standpoint then.
Now, is there any type of certain breeds or horse types that we can look at that might be a little bit more prone to this?
Absolutely. Of course, another cause is genetics itself, and we know that there's certain breeds that are more prone. And of course, one of the first things that comes to my mind is the pony.
Absolutely.
And our ponies are extremely easy keepers. Your miniature horses are subject to this, your miniature donkeys, your draft horses, your Morgans, and then there are others that would actually fall into this group as well. And as we look at this particular slide here, we have a pony. That pony is overweight there by all means, and it's very much subject to a metabolic issue and laminitis itself.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And speaking of ponies, our last live event was about feeding ponies.
It was, sure.
And so that's still available to watch. If you missed that one and wanted to go back and watch it, that is available if you'd like to see it.
Sure.
You can actually just go to our videos on our Facebook.
Okay. How about slide number 2?
All right.
Okay. What we have here in slide number 2 is the typical stance for a a laminitic horse, okay?
Absolutely.
Of course, I know this horse personally right here, and not only does this horse have laminitis, but this horse actually foundered. This horse actually had movement of rotation of that coffin bone itself. So if you see this, and if that horse doesn't want to move, then you're pretty much can say, well, I need to check it out, make sure that this horse doesn't have laminitis.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, would you say that stance is from the horse trying to relieve the weight off that hoof?
That stance comes about because those front feet are totally they're inflamed. We have severe inflammation going on. We have severe pain there, and that horse wants to put as much weight, number one, on its hind end to relieve some of the weight off the front end as well. And if you notice the toes of that horse, they tend to be up or rockered up a little bit. That horse wants to try to carry its weight on the heels of those front feet, because the majority of that pain is going to be found in the apex of the frog itself, toward the toe in that hoof there.
Absolutely.
So that's the typical stance that we're going to see there. The horse is going to be very reluctant to move at that point in time.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, is there different types of laminitis that our horse owners need to be aware of?
Sure, we have two general types or two categories that this would fall into. We have what we call an acute case of laminitis, and we have chronic laminitis, okay?
Absolutely.
And with an acute case, hopefully that's going to be a one-time deal. The symptoms will come up pretty quick, pretty suddenly. The horse is going to display that particular stance. The horse is going to be reluctant to move. As we mentioned earlier, it's going to try to walk on the heels and not the toe itself. And of course, most of that pain is going to be in the toe area itself there. And of course, with an acute case, this can lead to lameness at that point in time. And we need to get into the recovery mode, the treatment mode, as soon as we can. And of course, our goal is to help restore the blood flow back to the hoof capsule itself. And if we don't, then we can actually have enough damage done in an acute case where we actually end up with a rotation itself. Now, the other form is chronic. And as the name would suggest, it's going to be an ongoing problem itself. And if you look at the hoof capsule over a period of time, we're going to have what we call growth rings. The heels are going to be distorted to some extent. The toes going to be distorted to some extent. The heel will want to grow faster in that region and slower in the toe region. A lot of times we're going to end up with separation in the white line area that's very prominent. And of course, anytime we have an opening like that that's going on, that horse is going to be very much subject to an abscess. So a chronic laminitic case and abscessing tend to go hand in hand there itself. And of course, with chronic laminitis, most of these horses are going to have some type of a metabolic issue that's going on, whether that's insulin resistance, whether that's Cushing's or PPID as well. And a lot of these horses are going to end up with that typical cresty neck, which is very typical of our insulin-related horses. And of course, another thing that's very helpful, and if you're not familiar with this, is that is the cresty neck score. And that just tells us how much crest that we have, or how much fat deposit we actually have on the top of the neck of the horse itself. The cresty neck score will range anywhere from 0 to 5. Our goal is 0 to 2. So anything 3 and above is pretty much subject to some form of metabolic issue,
Absolutely.
insulin resistant as well.
Absolutely.
Now, there are, besides the two general categories, laminitis typically falls into three other areas there. There's laminitis that's caused from a sepsis-induced state, and that simply means that we have some type of an infection that has taken place in the horse. It has triggered toxins to be released into the bloodstream of the horse, and those are going to directly affect the small capillaries and the blood network within the hoof capsule itself. The other type would be a supporting limb type of laminitis, where we have an injury to one leg. The horse wants to offload, carry that weight onto the good leg, and we need to be mindful of that because the good leg at some point could develop a bout of laminitis.
Absolutely.
And then the last one is endocrinopathic, and we see more cases today that are being created from the endocrine system of the horse. That is, the horse is overweight, the horse either has Cushing's, it has insulin resistant, or equine metabolic syndrome. So the majority of the cases that we're dealing with today are from an endocrinopathic situation itself.
Absolutely.
All right?
Now, if your horse is a more of like a performance horse, and maybe, you don't have to worry about I always have to worry about the diet, but it's very active, not overweight, and so on. Would your concern be more in that supporting limb area, where they might develop a joint injury in one leg and so on?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Corbin. In fact, most of your supporting limb cases a lot of times are from an athletic horse itself. They're fit, they've been exercised, and then they're put on stall rest, and then they have to go through the process of recovery. Diet's important at that point in time, because with a horse that's in stall rest, it doesn't need as many calories. It's not exercising like it was at one point as well. So yes, good point.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what are, I know we kind of dove into it a little bit. What are some other things that can lead to laminitis?
Well, there's many things that can create a bout of laminitis. Of course, nutrition is one. Okay. And when we talk about nutrition, we're talking about providing a balanced diet to the horse. And one of the aspects of providing that balanced diet is the energy or calories that we're providing the horse itself. So we know that if we provide too many calories to the horse, it's going to put on excess weight.
Absolutely.
If it's not being exercised off or being used up by the horse itself. Okay? So we need to maintain the proper body condition score or cresty neck score. And of course, we realize that our problem there, as we mentioned, was the calories and the carbs and those consumptions. Now, the problem a lot of times is that as a horse owner, we may want to feed a complete feed to that particular horse. And when we do that, we don't have the ability to actually separate the calories from the nutrients that's going to be in the complete feed. And if we visually see that that horse is gaining weight, then we tend to cut back on the amount of feed that we're giving on a daily basis. We have reduced calories, yes, but we also reduce the nutrients that that horse needs. So we're creating a nutrient deficiency in a situation like that.
Absolutely.
And that's true if we have to feed more than what's recommended on the feed tag. We create excesses as far as the nutrients in that horse. Of course, another cause for laminitis would be from a mechanical standpoint. We've already alluded to this already as far as a fracture, whatever that might be, some type of an injury, whether that's a bone or whether that's some type of soft tissue or a ligament injury there. Of course, another thing too that can cause a laminitic bout is concussion from a hard surface.
Absolutely.
You know, we need to be mindful of the terrain that we're riding our horses on, and if we're doing a lot of pounding on a very hard surface such as a pavement or whatever, this can cause a bout of laminitis within that hoof itself. And of course, anytime we have any type of trauma to the lamina, which is very important in attaching that capsule to the coffin bone, then this can trigger a bout of laminitis as well. And then we have all your metabolic conditions that are linked directly to laminitis. And we've mentioned these: the Cushing's, the metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance. And so if we have any of these going on, then that horse is very much subject to laminitis. And then we have certain health issues that will trigger a bout of laminitis as well. Colic. We can have diarrhea in the horse. We could have pneumonia. We could have some type of a bacterial infection or a sepsis problem. We could have blood poisoning, retained placenta, especially in our mares. And even stress itself can lead to a bout of laminitis.
Absolutely.
So essentially, we've got this 1,000-pound animal that's big, strong, and massive. It has a unique digestive system, but if we disrupt that digestive system in any form of fashion, especially if it's in the hindgut area, then that's going to trigger certain toxins that's going to be released into the bloodstream that's going to directly affect the foot of the horse. Absolutely. And the end results can be laminitis then.
Absolutely.
So,
and going back to the mechanical side of things too, you know, of course, one of the things we always talk about is how important maintaining that farrier schedule is.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
And especially when we're talking about that mechanical side of things, that farrier is going to help you a lot of times keep that from happening. From the mechanical, you know, for making sure those hoofs are balanced and so on.
Sure. And of course, our goal is a good, healthy foot to begin with plenty of hoof wall, plenty of sole depth, no bacterial infections that are going on or taking place, and that should be our goal there.
Absolutely.
Sure. And if we have that perfect foot and we're feeding the balanced diet and we're managing that horse properly, it's very unlikely that we would have a bout of laminitis.
Absolutely. That's all that we can control from a horse owner standpoint. Of course, genetics always play a role as well. And, And, you know, the main goal for you as a horse owner, especially when preventing laminitis, is producing the best hoof quality that you possibly can.
Okay. Of course, when we do the best job we can as management, that horse can always get out of its stall, get into the feed room,
Absolutely,
and consume too much feed, whether that's a concentrate, grain, or whatever. Or that horse gets into a green, lush field of grass where it's not accustomed to. Absolutely. And we can quickly create a case of laminitis at that point. So when we have either a grain overload or a sugar overload that's coming from the green, lush grass, then what's going to happen is that the microbes in the hindgut of the horse will ferment excess carbohydrates there, and they become toxic during this fermentation process. They enter the bloodstream, and they're going to affect those tiny vessels that's supplying the much needed blood within that hoof capsules. They're going to leak, they're going to weep, and that's when we have the inflammation to set up, and that's when we have the pain that's going to start at that point in time.
Absolutely.
So yes, that's just another reason that can create a case of laminitis, the excess consumption of grain, a concentrate, a feed, or that green lush grass.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, can we talk a little bit about how laminitis is going to affect this hoof?
Sure. In fact, we just mentioned that we have the toxins that were released into the bloodstream. They're going to enter that hoof capsule. They're going to affect let's put up slide number 4 to Corbin.
All right, you got it.
Okay. This is the actual blood flow that's within that hoof capsule. And if you've never seen this before, and you wouldn't realize how much blood that we have supplied by a couple of the main arteries, the digital artery there. But the toxins that enter the bloodstream are going to affect those tiny capillaries there. And what's going to happen, as we said just a few minutes ago, we have the weeping that's going to take place. It's going to cause the inflammation. And that hoof capsule is a fixed structure. So this inflammation, this expansion has no place to go other than to create the pain and pressure within the hoof capsule. Of course, it's going to want to compromise the blood flow. The blood flow is going to be disrupted, okay? And of course, anytime we have compromised blood flow, we're reducing the amount of oxygen that's needed there as well. And then we end up with the death, the damage to the sensitive lamina. And the lamina is your attachment mechanism for the hoof capsule to the coffin bone itself. And the more damage that we have there, the lamina is weakened. And then that's when we can have the movement or rotation of the coffin bone itself. And we can actually, if we don't jump right on the situation to help restore this blood flow back, we can actually have the coffin bone that would actually rotate out the bottom of the hoof capsule itself.
Absolutely.
And of course, if you'll put up the next slide, Corbin, which would be number 5. This is a typical x-ray where we actually had rotation that has taken place within the hoof capsule. This is a foundered horse itself, okay? So I just wanted to kind of show you that. And that's the only way that we know for sure how much rotation and the degree of rotation that's actually taken place. Absolutely. And that's with an x-ray.
And I know we've had a lot of questions here within the comments regarding, grass and diet and feeding. And I know, especially when we've kind of established what laminitis is and how it's developed, and now we're at the part of managing it.
Sure.
A big part of managing that is going to be through the diet, ensuring that the horse is getting the right kind of grass and hay and feedstuffs. And so can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk about some management practices, and in that we're going to talk about prevention as well, okay? Of course, when we talk about the diet of the horse, we always want to feed by what that horse is doing, okay? Of course, we have idle horses, we have horses that are in light work, medium work, and heavy work, and the nutritional needs are all different for those horses there, okay? And of course, one of the things that we have to take a look at is the energy or the calories that we're providing to those different groups of horses itself. So number one, we want to feed by workload of that particular horse. We also want to keep in mind that every horse is an individual in itself, and we want to feed accordingly, okay?
Absolutely.
And that's where body condition score or cresty neck score comes into place. We always want to keep a handle on that. We always want to monitor that. And we always want to, if we're talking about body condition score on a scale of 1 to 9, then we're always shooting for about a 5. And of course, on the cresty neck score, anywhere from a 0 to 2 is our goal there as well. It's best to feed little and often as well, okay? Of course, if you think about the horse, that horse would graze 18, 19, 20 hours a day. And so what it's doing, it's consuming the grass, and we have a continuous flow through the system of the horse itself. And of course, keep in mind the size of the stomach of the horse. The typical average 1,000-pound horse is only going to be able to hold about 5 pounds of feed. And of course, anytime we exceed that, then we're forcing that excess back into the hindgut, which disrupts the hindgut itself, which can cause the release of those toxins that we don't want, okay?
Absolutely.
And sometimes, especially with our idle horses or horses that are under light work, we have to avoid those cereal grains, those sweet feeds, because of the sugar content that we're going to have there. And a lot of times with that group of horses, we're going to feed the basic diet, which is hay, grass, and then we're going to add some type of a forage or hay balancer to that mix in order to meet the daily nutrient requirements of that particular horse then. Of course, if we have a horse that's under hard work, then its caloric requirements would be much greater, and we'll make that particular adjustment as well. How fast that horse eats is another good indicator. And in fact, a lot of these horses that are overweight are going to consume that food rather quickly, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, we need to avoid a lot of times if we have that overweight horse, or if we have that horse with a metabolic condition, we have a horse that's subject to a bout of laminitis, we want to avoid those grasses that are high in fructans. And fructans are our enemy when it comes to that group of horses as well. Fructans are simply sugars, okay? Another thing, and we don't think about this as well, if you're using shavings as bedding, we want to avoid those black walnut shavings because they can be highly toxic. They can be absorbed or they can be ingested, either way. And anytime a horse comes into contact with your black walnut shavings, typically within 2 to 3 days, we're going to have a bout of laminitis because of the toxins in.
Wow.
If we're going to change the diet of the horse, we're going to do that on a very slow and gradual basis, okay? And also when we talk about prevention and maintenance, exercise is always good, okay? And then another thing that we need to put into the mix as well when we talk about management and prevention, if we have a Cushing's horse or a PPID horse or an insulin resistant horse or an equine metabolic syndrome horse, then we need to address those issues as well, either through medication, through proper diet, or whatever, to avoid the risk of laminitis that's being created from those metabolic issues, Corbin.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And of course,
Let me throw up this slide on grass.
here, let's put up slide number 6, please.
Nope, sorry, I think I jumped. No.
That can become our enemy, especially if we have that overweight horse. That horse is, that horse that is subject to a bout of laminitis. Or if we have a horse that has the IR issue as well. And so this green lush grass, a lot of times these are cool season grasses. This can be fescue, ryegrass, clover, or whatever. And of course your cool season grasses tend to thrive in the spring of the year and also in the fall of the year after we've gotten through summer, and they kind of come back and they rejuvenate themselves as well.
Absolutely.
But they're high in fructans, and if we're going to allow our horses to graze, then we need to monitor the amount of grazing that we are allowing. We also need to be mindful of the time of day that we're allowing that to take place. And the most opportune time day to allow that horse to graze would be the early morning hours, because our sugar level, our fructan levels at that point will be their lowest. Now, does temperature become a factor with these cool season grasses? And the answer to that is yes, because if we're at 40 degrees or less at night, then that grass is not going to utilize or burn up the stored sugar during those night hours. So if we're 40 or less, then we need to be mindful as well.
Absolutely.
Or if we have dry, droughty conditions, then that is going to make a difference as well within that grass.
Now I know, especially with these chronic laminitis horses, there's really no cure. But what are some of the treatments and recovery processes that we can look at?
When we take a look at that, Corbin, it's going to take a team to do that. It's going to take our veterinarian, it's going to take our professional farrier, and it's going to take the horse owner.
Absolutely.
And all three of them working together to manage and to treat this horse that has the bout of laminitis. Now, if we can identify what caused the problem, number one, that would be very helpful as far as future management. If we just had an acute case, the horse got into the feed bin, we know what caused the problem, then we can put practices in place to avoid that situation again, okay?
Absolutely.
If we know that we have a metabolic problem that's caused by excess sugar, then from a management standpoint, then we need to deal with that as well, okay? But it takes a team, the vet, the farrier, the horse owner, all working together. They all have their part in the treatment of the horse itself. And of course, from a farrier standpoint, there's several different corrective shoes that can be used, different types of boots that can be used. The vet may come in to do the x-rays to confirm whether or not we've had rotation. The vet may prescribe something for pain for the horse at that point in time. And then from a horse owner standpoint, it falls back on their shoulders at that point to do what they've been told as far as the farrier and the veterinarian, to provide the right type of diet and just simply follow their instructions until we get the horse through the process itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that, there are a lot of different theories regarding, especially, in the farrier world, some of the shoes to be used and the processes to go with. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, an important aspect of it is, find yourself a farrier and veterinarian that you trust and that you can all three work together.
That's right. Exactly. You all work together, and keep in mind that each horse is an individual in itself. And what we put in place for this laminitic horse A might not work for laminitic horse B.
Absolutely.
Okay, so keep that in mind as well. All right. We also need to remember that from a diet standpoint, that most equine diets are deficient of the nutrients important for laminitis recovery. They're not there. Even if we're feeding a balanced diet, there's still nutrients that that horse needs when it's in this situation that's not going to be present, okay?
Absolutely.
So let's keep that in mind. And this will get us into the point when we talk a little bit more about nutrition. In fact, as far as the laminitic horse, we know that providing a good quality hoof supplement is going to help tremendously to the laminitic horse, okay? And what a good hoof supplement is going to do over a period of time is to regrow the foot internally. And as we regrow the foot internally, that's going to thicken and strengthen that hoof wall. Because one of the most important aspects of what it's going to do, it's going to help with the lamina, which is critical in keeping it healthy and rejuvenated, okay? And then a hoof supplement is going to help with some sole depth there. And that's going to help tremendously with our laminitic, our sore-footed horse as well.
Absolutely.
And one of the products that we have here at Life Data Labs and have had for 40 plus years now is our hoof supplement called Ferris Formula.
Absolutely.
There's a couple of versions of that, but one of these is our double strength version of
And I know we got several UK people here, so that's also might be the original Ferrier's formula or also the double concentrate.
That's right.
Formula.
If it's in the UK, if it's in the green bag in the UK, it's a concentrate. Yeah, here it's the double strength. Okay. And the difference between the two is the amount that you feed per day.
Absolutely.
Number one. With the original, we're looking at 6 ounces or 170 grams per day for a 1,000-pound horse. With the double strength, half as much.
Absolutely.
Half a cup, 3 ounces.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And of course, Ferrier's formula can be fed safely to any laminitic or foundered horse. Mm-hmm. There's very little to no sugar or carbs within Ferrier's formula itself. Okay? So that would be my starting point there when we talk about nutrition.
Well, I know the big question too is going to be, of course, there's a lot of hoof supplements on the market.
Sure.
Why Ferrier's formula?
Well, Ferrier's formula was one of the first ones on the market, number one. And Ferrier's formula was developed, it was formulated through research that was completed by Dr. Frank Gravely. In other words, one of his passions was the horse, number one. And working with his horses in his early career, he was dealing with horses that had hoof issues. And of course, one of those was laminitis or founder. And he realized that whatever he was doing, whatever the farrier was doing, there was still something missing, and that was nutrition. And so he took the time to do the research in collecting blood from these problematic horses, and he was able to identify certain deficiencies that were missing, and those nutrients that were missing actually focused or targeted all the dermal tissue in the horse or connective tissue. Of course, when we talk about dermal and connective tissue, we're talking about the skin, we're talking about hair, but most importantly, the hoof of the horse itself. So what Ferrier's formula is going to do, it's going to provide those nutrients it's needed to grow, to maintain, to improve dermal tissue. And then it's also going to help improve hair coat, hair condition. In fact, that's one of the first things that we're going to see. But it's going to improve the internal aspect of that laminitic horse.
Absolutely.
All right?
It's also the only hoof supplement on the market that has a white paper to it.
It does.
So it's been independently tested, researched, and published in the Veterinary Journal.
And this is, the green bag would be a 60-day supply for a 1,000-pound horse at a half a cup or 3 ounces per day or 85 grams per day as well.
Absolutely.
Now, here at Life Data Labs, we've always been research-minded from the beginning. We're still research-minded. In fact, we have an in-house lab that we've had for several years now. Dr. Scott Gravely is involved in this particular lab. And one of the first things that he did, and Dr. Gravely did, was to identify as many of these laminitic and foundered horses as well. And they wanted to do some additional research. Okay? And what they found, even when the horse was on Ferrier's formula, it was doing what it was supposed to, but there were still some deficiencies and excesses in this group of horses. And so they've done additional blood work, and they have developed a companion product that goes along with Ferrier's formula, and it's our lamina formula as well. And we can pull it out as well. And these two products are fed together.
Of course, right now the lamina formula is only available in the U.S.
Right.
It's basically brand new, so it still hasn't reached some of those other countries. But go ahead.
But anyway, when we add the lamina to the Ferrier's formula, the lamina formula is going to contain some additional nutrients that's not in Ferrier's formula to begin with, okay? And of course, one of our problems with the laminitic horse is the inflammation or the swelling that's taking place within the hoof capsule. So the lamina contains some ingredients that's going to help reduce that inflammation there. And when we reduce that inflammation, that helps us to maintain proper blood flow that hoof needs to be healthy. It's also going to help against any future bouts of laminitis as well. And hopefully, with that being said, it's going to reduce the incident of a laminitic case itself. And one of the things that I personally found from the addition of lamina to Farrier's formula in a personal horse that I had myself that had chronic laminitis is it really helps to increase sold out. And the more sold out that we have, especially if we got some rotation that has taken place, that just gives us a little more protection, a little more support, and a little more relief from pain if that horse is on a hard surface or whatever.
Absolutely.
So companions, they go together, and they're both ideal products for that laminitic and foundered horse itself. Now, you might ask the question, if I had an acute case of laminitis, then we would feed both, and then once we got beyond our problem there, everything was good, then we could do away with the lamina and continue with Farrier's formula by itself, okay? And it would be sufficient.
Absolutely.
In an acute case. In a chronic case, no. They need to be fed together from now on to help protect that foot. Yes, yeah.
And this one, especially this one right here, with the combination of the two, would you want to provide a forage balancer along with that, or?
Yes, you can. You could provide a forage balancer with that, unless your horse had a metabolic condition. And then we have some specific problems for the IR horse and the Cushing's horse, okay? And then that kind of changes the scheme of things just a little bit itself. Yes, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay? Please keep in mind, number one, that regardless if you're feeding Farrier's formula and the lat foot against the excess intake of carbs from grass and those fructans, okay? We've got to manage that. It's not going to protect that horse from an accidental overconsumption of grain. Keep that in mind there. And it's not going to protect that horse from a mechanical problem such as road founder or an injury or something like that itself. Okay?
Absolutely.
Management is critical. And when we do the right things, we hope that we end up with the right results when it's all said and done.
And at this point with that chronic laminitic horse, our goal is really to make that horse as comfortable as possible.
Sure.
And try to prevent those problems from worsening and from and having less problems as the horse lives on. Available in the United States. It is a newer product, so the easiest route would, you can get it directly from us, but we have several dealers who carry it as well.
Right.
Do you recall some of those dealers we've got who carry it?
If I'm not mistaken, Big D's out of Ohio is one of our dealers that's carrying the lamina. And, the easiest thing to do would either be to call customer service here. They'll be glad to help you and point you to a dealer.
Absolutely.
Okay? Or you can go to our website and there's a dealer locator built into the site itself. And one of the things you can do is check to see if that dealer handles Farrier's formula, number one, and has it in stock. Well, that dealer can obtain the lamina formula as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Mike said, if you ever have problems finding a product or have questions on products or questions on the ingredients or over supplementation or anything like that, we've got a pro customer service team.
Sure.
Give them a call. They're the nicest people in the world, and they'll be happy to talk to you. I'm sure several people here in the comments have probably called and talked to them, and know for a fact how nice they are.
Sure.
And how easy they are to talk to. So don't ever hesitate to give us a call. And because we'll be happy to help you. Or to, again, just email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com.
Sure, and one other point too, we have a full-time veterinarian on staff
Absolutely.
here as well, Dr. Scott Gravely, and he'll be more than glad to help you with any of your nutritional needs as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're about to open this up to some questions. I'm going to pick up my iPad here and start asking some questions in the comments to Mike. But first, let's talk about the giveaway a little bit.
Sure, that's a biggie there.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, we do have a grand prize giveaway. That link has been sliding down here at the bottom of your screen for basically the entire presentation now. But you can go to lifedata.live/win to enter. This is for the U.S. only due to, again, those international giveaway laws. It's going to run the entire week. So even if you are watching this not live and watching the recording of it, you've got until next Friday, that's the 25th.
I believe that's correct.
To enter. So of course, since you sat through the presentation, we're going to give you a little bit of an extra advantage there. So let me pull up our last slide here, or one of our last slides. The secret word is going to be lamina. So you can go to that link and enter in the secret word lamina, and that's going to increase your chances to win. It shows us that you watched the presentation, and that'll just increase your chances to win. And the winners will be announced on
Next Friday.
Next Friday, we'll send out an email so make sure your email address that you enter is correct, or else it will go to someone's spam folder.
And what are we going to give them?
And so what we're going to do is we're going to have one person is going to basically receive what we would suggest for that laminitic course, and that's going to be a bag of this Various Formula Double Strength, which is a 60-day supply, and then 2 bags of the Lamina formula. That's basically going to give them a 60-day supply for that laminitic course.
Very good. Okay.
Then we're going to have 2 other people are going to receive basically our kind of hoof care package, which is the Various Formula Double Strength, the hoof clay, and the finish. This kind of package here is our go-to for hoof abscesses, thrush, white line disease, just overall hoof quality.
Any type of a bacterial or fungal issue.
Absolutely. You're going to be taking care of that hoof internally with Various Formula, and then protecting it externally with the hoof clay and finish. Again, these are non-caustic, so they're not going to burn you. They're not going to burn the horse. They're safe to use. The finish is my absolutely favorite when it comes to the environmental control. We talk about the wet and dry. This is wonderful for moisture balance as well as an antimicrobial. And the hoof clay is great for those hoof defects, cracks, and so on. So those are going to be the two giveaways to 3 different people. And so enter that, and good luck.
Sure. Let me inject this too, Corbin. Right. I think a lot of folks don't fully understand the advantage of the liquid product Various Finish. There's 2 sides to that particular product there. It's an antimicrobial, so it's going to deal with any type of bacterial or a bacteria issue. But the other side is, I kind of call it a conditioner if you want to. In other words, it has the ability to monitor, to regulate the moisture within that hoof capsule.
Absolutely.
So if it's extremely wet, it has the ability to seal, to shed that excess moisture, but it still allows the foot to breathe. And if you're in an area where you're turning your horses out in the morning and we have a lot of dew, if you would apply the product about 30 minutes to the hoof capsule before you turn your horse out, it's going to protect the foot from the dew that's present there that wants to get that hoof capsule extremely wet. And right the opposite, if it's extremely dry, we know that that hoof capsule wants to contract, it wants to crack and chip, and if you'll use it during that time frame as well, it will help with that situation. I would use it at least 1 to 2 times a week under normal conditions as a preventative measure. If you're under extreme conditions, you can actually use it on a daily basis, or at least every other day anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, we've got a couple questions here.
Okay.
Mike, from some of our viewers here. if your horse is 6 weeks into the acute case, should you still start with both products or just Farrier's formula?
I would start with both products in an acute case.
All right. A little bit more information on the plus joint.
Okay. You could actually feed the DS plus joint along with the lamina if that was the situation in that particular horse there.
Absolutely.
But the DS plus joint is a combo product. It's 2-in-1. It has a hoof supplement and it has joint health or joint protection as far as that side as well. The yellow bag that's on the table here would be a 60-day supply at half a cup, 3 ounces, or 85 grams per day.
Absolutely.
It's done a good job as far as hoof quality, and it has done a good job in maintaining joint health as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's going to help you basically not have to feed 2 different products.
That's right.
It's also going to help with oversupplementation. A lot of if you're feeding a separate hoof and a separate joint supplement, a lot of those times they can have repeated ingredients, which then can lead to oversupplementation. And so, yeah, this is kind of the combo product.
It is, and if you actually do the math, put the pencil to it, you'll find that this will be a little more economical than buying 2 separate products themselves.
Absolutely. Okay, this is a good question here. Can you use double strength and lamina along with the IR or Cushing's? We also have a IR formula for insulin-resistant horses and an adrenal formula for Cushing's horses.
Right.
This was part of a huge research study that we did, which came out with those 3 products: lamina formula, adrenal formula, and IR formula.
Well, what you would do in that situation there, if this was strictly an IR horse and we didn't have Cushing's going on, strictly IR, then we would feed the IR formula, okay, and then we would feed the double strength Farrier's formula to protect the foot of the horse. We would not include the lamina in with that then, yes. Yep. And if we had a horse that had both IR and Cushing's, then we would choose the IR formula along with double strength again.
Absolutely.
If we have a horse that just has Cushing's only and no IR, then we use the adrenal formula that's for the Cushing's horse and the double strength Farrier's formula. It can get confusing.
It gets confusing. We've got a chart on our website. If you visit like the double strength Facebook page, or not Facebook page, the website page, or the lamina formula product page, there should be a button that says comparable products or something along those lines. You can click that. Basically opens up an Excel spreadsheet that shows the specific problems for those horses and the recommended products that we would recommend for them. And again, call us. Give us a call. Let us know what's going on, and we can definitely just recommend what the best fit is going to be. Let's see. Would the lamina formula be beneficial for a non-laminitic, thin-soled TB to help increase sole depth?
No. If you didn't have a case of laminitis, I would strictly use the double strength Farrier's formula, and that's going to help increase sole depth by itself.
Absolutely. What would you recommend for that horse who maybe genetically has thin soles, on double strength, still has thin soles? Or
of course, I would also take a look at the environmental factors, number one, that's working against that foot. So make sure that we don't have any type of a bacterial invasion that's going on.
Absolutely.
Yes. But when you feed Farrier's formula, it will increase sole depth, especially if you have a horse that's a little ouchy on a hard surface. But with a laminitic horse, if we're feeding Farrier's formula and we add the lamina, that's just going to give us more sole depth in the product. I'm not saying that Farrier's formula won't increase sole depth. It will, and it will thicken hoof walls.
Yeah. And the sole is always in contact with the environment.
Right.
It's always being exposed to bacteria and terrain. And so all of that also plays a role, which kind of leads me into this real quick. Our next live event will be protecting the sole. So that was a good question to help lead us into this. protecting the sole. It's going to be Friday, September 15th. And we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty when it comes to the sole and what it's affecting it, what's its purpose, and what are some things that we can do both externally and internally to promote that health of that sole. So that's up on our Facebook. You can go ahead and mark yourself as going. And of course, as we get closer to that, we'll release more information.
Be glad to have you. Sure.
Okay. This one comes from YouTube. Any tips of preventing abscesses?
Any tips?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Any tips? It's getting late in the afternoon.
It is.
As far as preventing abscesses, if you have a good, healthy foot, you're less likely to have an abscess. Keep in mind that for a horse to have an abscess, bacteria has to get into that hoof capsule to set up an infection or the abscess itself. So if we have some cracks, some chips, some wall separation, if the horse is shod and we have the old nail holes, then we need to address that as well. So a good health, our goal is that good healthy foot to begin with, and it may require the addition of a hoof supplement and some form of a topical to protect that foot at that point. And so the combination of Farrier's formula and the finish and the clay would be a good management tool to use at that point in time as well.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it earlier where, a lot of these laminitic horses can get that separation at the white line.
Particularly if it's a chronic case, that's going to happen. Your hoof clay works great in packing that separation there. Yes.
Absolutely. So doing what you can, as Mike said, to protect those areas and daily management. That's something that a lot of horse owners tend to take for granted is how useful and how helpful that can be.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Could Farrier's formula be used as a balancer grain along with hay?
We do have a balancer that we have not mentioned, and it's called Barn Bag. It is our forage and hay balancer that's fed at 3 ounces or a half a cup per day, and it will meet the nutritional needs of the horse along with whatever hay and pasture you are providing. Now, if that horse has a hoof issue, if it has some poor quality feed, we can add Farrier's formula to the barn bag without over supplementing, yes.
Okay.
But our forage balancer, hay balancer is barn bag.
Absolutely. We're still getting a couple questions regarding the different specialty products. So the way I kind of think of it, and hopefully this helps, is the insulin resistance is kind of top of the pyramid.
Right.
So if your horse has insulin resistance, despite if it also has Cushing's or also has laminitis, the insulin resistance is going to be the first one you tackle. So we're going to look at the IR formula, and that's going to help address Cushing's and laminitis for that horse, along with the double strength. If the horse has Cushing's and laminitis, you would do the adrenal formula, because that next area is going to be your Cushing's. So if it just has Cushing's or just has laminitis, you do the adrenal. The lamina formula is just for a laminitic horse. If it just has laminitis, if it's got the other issues, then you're going to look at those other products, and that's going to address the laminitis as well. They've got a lot of very, very similar ingredients, and I think the IR one's probably the more powerful of the three.
Sure. Anytime we have a metabolic condition, from a management standpoint, we want to address that metabolic condition first. If we don't and we allow that to get out of hand, that horse becomes very much subject to a bout of laminitis.
Absolutely.
Okay? So our goal is to manage the metabolic issue first, and then we're going to incorporate Farrier's formula into the mix, and that's going to help protect the foot itself then.
Absolutely. Let's see. Now, we do, for those in the UK and in Canada who are watching, I know some of the specialty products aren't available there, but you know, Ferris Formula still does some major work for that laminitic horse. As Mike said, this is really a booster. So if you were just to feed one product for that laminitic horse,
if I could only feed one product, it would be Ferris Formula.
It'd be Ferris Formula. This is really a booster for that.
Right.
So definitely don't. Ferris Formula is excellent for the laminitic horse. This is just that extra boost to help support that horse. All right. It looks like we're getting pretty close to the end of these questions. Hopefully we've had a lot of questions come in, so definitely probably missed a few, which if I did, drop them in real quick before we exit. Or, like I said, email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com, and we would love to help you out. Don't forget the giveaway. Let me pop that up one more time here for everybody. And so in your URL, or in your browser, I said URL, in your browser, you can just type lifedata.live/win. You can drop that in there in your browser, and that'll take you to the link. You can use the secret word as lamina. So, and then also, let's see. Don't forget about our next live event. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. There we go. Don't forget about our next live event, which is going to be on the sole of the horse, protecting it. And so that will be another great one.
It'll be September the 15th.
Put this up one more time here. There we go.
2 p.m. Central Time.
Protecting the sole, Friday, September 15th.
Yeah.
And so that'll be another great one. And then, you know, we've been doing these live events for a couple of years now.
We have.
And we, I think, you know, there for a while, we were almost doing them once a month during COVID and talked about several different topics. So if you have a problem such as thrush, white line disease, you know, take a look at those. And we have a lot more of these videos that talk about those other specific problems and specific issues that can help.
Sure.
And it's about an hour long, just like this one.
And that's what we're here for. We're here to help you from a nutritional standpoint.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call.
And we hope you have a great weekend.